Hello, Chris, and this is going to be an interview evaluating a prototype of Piazza thread merging. And
Okay.
let me ask you some demographical questions first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, so what's your name?
Chris Poch. It's Poch.
Okay, and how many classes have you TA'd so far?
I've TA'd one particular class, and this is my second semester TAing that class.
Mm-hmm. And which class is it?
Software analysis and testing.
Okay, and if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I am 31.
31. Okay. And where are you located geographically?
I am located in Vienna, Virginia, which is the Tyson's Corner area, which is a major employment center near Washington, D.C.
Oh, that's awesome. So East Coast.
Yes.
Very nice.
I could probably make it to you, depending on what traffic's like at the moment, within 4 hours.
Well, I mean, being 4th of July weekend and all, I place it
Good.
closer at 8.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Um, okay, so where do you normally interact with Piazza in your capacity as a TA? In other words, where do you work? Is it a home office? Do you do it from work? Do you do it, in the evenings from bed?
I do it mainly from my home computer and my work computer. The exact when in terms of physical location is a little bit blurred because I primarily work from home.
Mhm.
But I'm usually in my office about 1 day a week, and so the computer I use changes on a typical day depending on the time of day, but where I am physically sitting looks largely the same. Like, based on the time that you caught me, I'm currently on my work computer, which is about a year old, and my home computer is 7 years old. So there's a little bit. Sometimes I tend to use the work computer a little more than just for work, just because it's so much newer. But in terms of Piazza stuff, there, I guess the OS is a little different. My work computer is Windows 8. My home is 10. But I'm running it generally in Chrome on both places, so there's not a whole lot of difference to me which computer I'm looking at it in. It tends to be a tab that I keep open in my web browser on both computers just all the time.
Okay. And so basically, you interact with Piazza on the desktop application, in the in-browser app.
Yeah, I do have the Android app installed on my phone, but and I will use that periodically. But I'm honestly more likely to look at emails from Piazza and then click a link to get into the mobile app if I'm not at a computer and I have some reason to check Piazza. I've just found the display on the mobile app to be not great for a lot of things. Like, if you use any kind of math symbols, the way it renders on the mobile app is really odd, that it puts a lot of line breaks in it. So a message that was, nice and compact becomes
Mm-hmm.
so it's, and you combine that with a smaller screen and it just gets really hard to read. And I've also found that the autocorrect, which is probably more a phone thing than Piazza, really gets in the way with some of the words that I tend to use on Piazza, some technical terms. And I've had enough times where I've said something stupid and not caught it, that if I can, that during the times when it seems students would be most active, I'm either just not available or I have a computer nearby. So instead of doing it halfway on a phone and say stupid things and sometimes misunderstand what students are saying because the display was bad, I just know that I'm going to get what I'm going to get in the web browser. So I've pretty much to me, the mobile app at this point is a view-only kind of thing, and I know it's going to be an inferior experience, so I try and stick to the desktop as much as I can.
Okay. Let's see. How often do you find yourself merging threads on Piazza? Hang on 1 second, please. I'm getting an echo here for some reason.
Yeah, let me check and see if my... I'm gonna... Oh, I think it's using my webcam mic instead of my headset. Is that better?
1 2 1 2 3.
Check.
No, check. Well, it's a little better. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay.
Okay, I just also forced Hangouts to use it, that it was definitely not using the mic I intended. Okay, so...
How often do you find yourself merging threads on Piazza?
At the beginning of the semester, I was doing it a lot. It's slowed down some, and I think part of that is that in recent history, my class has tended to have a fairly high drop rate. And so even though we still have a couple more, or I guess tomorrow is the drop deadline, we've given back most of the stuff that's coming back before the drop deadline, and so a lot of people have already dropped. And the people who drop tend to be the ones who are the panickers and the least prepared, which also tend to be the same ones who make a lot of duplicate threads. But we also, this semester, gave a syllabus quiz that was 3% of the grade, and it was all or nothing, but you could take it as many times as you wanted. So I believe it was 12 questions, and you had to score 100% to get any credit for it. So that has helped us a fair amount this semester in terms of setting expectations. And I believe one of the questions there were a couple questions that dealt with Piazza, and I believe one of them specifically dealt with searching before posting. I'd have to go back and verify that, but I know that we had one question about making sure that you check Piazza at least every 24 hours, because we've had a couple of instances in the past where, despite that being in the syllabus, that was a requirement, we would post a change to something even 3 days before an assignment was due, and then get hate mail from students that you didn't tell us about this. And it's well, yes, we did. So my experience has been, at the start of the semester, you get a combination of new students and people who just aren't, for some reason, aren't familiar with expectations, who post a lot of duplicates. And then as the semester moves on, the newer students get a better feel for how Piazza is supposed to work. The people who think that the world revolves around them and can't be bothered to search tend to drop the class as they discover that the class doesn't revolve around them. And so I'd say that even with a smaller class at the end of the semester, the posting quality tends to be higher on Piazza, and we frequently see about the same number of posts in the second half of the semester as the first half of the semester, but the quality is much higher, the chance of duplicates is lower, and oftentimes it only takes a thread or two if you have someone who hasn't been searching, for them to figure out that their question is going to get combined, and that means their response is going to be, or their part of the question is going to be less visible to people if they ask a duplicate. So it's in their best interest to search.
Okay. So basically, again, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Let me turn my speakers down a bit too. That helps sometimes.
Okay, so why do you merge threads? Is it basically just to get rid of duplicates, or is there another reason?
We do it for getting rid of duplicates. We'll get a lot of people asking the same question, and in some cases, we've had it. We have it more on something is broken type questions, and I think it's part because those kinds of questions tend to induce panic. That you'll have a student and they say, "My code doesn't compile," and they throw up their hands and post on Piazza, and it doesn't matter that half the class has had that exact same error. In some cases, it could be. We had one assignment last semester where there was a missing space in the assignment that was given out, and for various reasons we didn't actually issue a corrected version, so people who weren't following Piazza all made the mistake of leaving out the space that had to be in there for the command to run, and we probably had 10 different threads at one point of people saying, "My code doesn't run and I haven't done anything yet, why does it not compile?" And the answer was right there. And so we did a lot of merging because it's not helpful to have 10 different threads, especially when the question already has a good answer. We've also done it on ones that were discussion. Discussion, we tend to merge less, but if someone asks exactly the same discussion question or a question where we want to make sure it goes in exactly the same direction, we will merge them because it doesn't do anyone any help if you have 3 or 4 different threads where people are all talking about the same thing. And if you want to come back and refer to it later, you can't ever find what you were looking for because you're like, well, I know I was in one of these threads about this, but the search in Piazza usually isn't good enough to, if you're talking about similar things in multiple threads, it'll get you all of those threads. But if those threads have a lot of posts, it can take you a long time to figure out what you actually wanted.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and as far as the current process goes, do you find it simple, difficult? Is it intuitive? How would you describe it?
I would say that it is more difficult than it should be, and I think there's 2 big problems with it. One is an interface problem, which is that I usually end up having to open a new browser window to find the post that I want to merge with, because once you click that button and say I want to merge, you then have to click on it in your window on the left-hand side, but you lose the ability to actually look for more than the little summary you see in the, I guess, the tile, if you will, for the thread. And oftentimes when I'm merging a thread, I know what I want to merge it to, but I can't identify what I want to merge it to from that little snippet. So I end up having to open up a new window unless someone... We've had a couple of times where someone posted the same thing like back to back. And it was literally the same person with more or less the exact same words. And those are easy enough to merge. But a more common use case is that someone said something yesterday, or someone started this thread yesterday, and that here you are adding a new post, or adding a new thread today that should be combined with the one from yesterday or last week. And those I frequently end up having to open up a new window to be able to properly find what I want to merge it with. The other issue I've had with merging is actually more of a notification or student problem, which is that I've discovered that in most cases you don't get a notification when threads are merged regardless of your notification settings. So if in general I'm subscribed to a thread if I comment in it or if I started in it, and I'll get alerts based on that thread as it changes. But what happens if I merge it is I'm not subscribed to the thread that it merges me to. And so I've had a couple of times where a student will open a question that's a clear duplicate. I've merged it, and like 24 hours later, the student will open another duplicate, oftentimes angry the second time, wanting to know why their thread was deleted. And the reality is the question was answered more than a day ago, but they didn't ever see the response. They didn't realize that I merged it, and so they think that we're just being unresponsive, where it would be great if Piazza would send a notification that said this thread has been merged with thread whatever. The actual content of the message, other than giving you a link to the thread that it's now part of and telling you that it was merged, isn't that important. But that's the hesitation I have in merging, or sometimes now I'll even post in the thread and say that this is a duplicate of before merging it. And you say, oh, that seems kind of silly, but I do that because that way I know the student's going to get a notification, and so we don't have the angry student coming back later saying, why did you delete my thread, or what happened to my thread? My question was never answered. This isn't an honor code violation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm sorry, just to recap, what was the first issue that you said you were having? I just want to write it down and take notes. And
yeah, the first issue is about when picking the thread to merge with. So when you're going to merge a thread, you start from the thread you're currently looking at, which is going to be merged into something else. And I find I usually have to open another browser window to identify the thread to merge into for all but the most obvious. If you ask the same question back 3 times, I can probably do it from their interface. But especially if it was a discussion where the subject for an exact same discussion may not always line up, I have a very hard time doing that right in one browser window, unless I've gone and written down the post number or something like that prior to starting the merge.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present you with the card interface. It's only 3 cards, and I'm going to explain to you how it works, and then we'll take it from there with the next set of questions. So I'm going to do a screen share with you, and you tell me if this is working for you.
Okay.
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 Can you see the card?
Preview window with a drawing of Piazza.
Awesome. Okay. So basically, as you can see, this is a very rough prototype. So, we're just looking for feedback on the functionality, more or less, not so much on the little design aspects.
Okay.
And this is a Piazza window. It's very simple. It's very similar to the way it works now. You have the threads on the left-hand side. You have the actual information on the right-hand side. And if you were trying to merge a thread, what you would basically do is you would just physically grab the thread with your cursor, and you would place it over the thread that you're trying to merge it into.
Okay.
And voila, there it is. On the left-hand side, you now have the 2 threads, and the merged thread is showing, and you'll have thread 1, and then thread 2 text will be added to the bottom of it.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
I think that design is very straightforward. Now, if I may, a suggestion for how to make that design even better is what I would like on that design is where you showed the threads on the left-hand side. Mm-hmm. I'd like an expand button where I could, instead of seeing the little tiles, your tiles look roughly the same as the ones that are in Piazza now. What I'd like is maybe like a plus button. It could even be in that little menu on them, and it doesn't have to be right there, but something where I could make them so they maybe double or triple in size, and I got a little bit of a scroll bar, and I could actually see at least the question text, if not even the responses. Mm-hmm. But right now you see maybe the first sentence. You see it's kind of like the Gmail interface where you see the start of the email, and if someone writes back yes, that's probably sufficient in that little preview. But most of the questions on Piazza, at least for my class, tend to be multiple lines long, and the problem is, my biggest problem in merging threads is that I can't find what I actually wanted to merge in, that people are also really bad at writing subjects. And so if I could expand the one or more of those windows, even if I clicked on another one, if it closed again, that would be fine with me. But if I could expand it so I had a way to see without ever having to leave, I'd be more likely to merge threads, and I'd never have to open a new browser window. And I always hate opening a new Piazza browser window because it's a little bit slow to load since it seems to be fairly JavaScript heavy. So it just always, I know it's going to be it's going to take me longer than I'd like it to if I have to open a new window. So I would much prefer to be able to do it all without leaving the current window. And it just feels, so I think I like your interface in terms of making it more clear of exactly what you're doing. But what would make it even more helpful is if I had some kind of way in there to see a little bit more of the content. Make it so it's less likely for me to have to open a new window. Or, I mean, the other problem with opening a new window is you're essentially back on the front page of your class again. So even a simpler way, if you're looking for a simple fix, would be make one of the options in the little menu for the tiles on the side to open it in a new tab. So I could, or open it in a new window or whatever. So I could click on the ones that I thought might be the thread I was looking for and have it open it in a new window, and I get a new window and I don't have to go and try and find those same things, run the same search or whatever. That would help me a lot.
Okay. You also mentioned the second issue that you were having with the notification of the students.
Yep.
Do you have any ideas on how this interface could be improved to address that?
I honestly am not sure if it's an interface change. To me, it honestly feels like a bug in how Piazza works, because I think that anytime you merge, you should get a notification. And I haven't gone and run all kinds of side-by-sides to see if there are conditions where you get them when doing a merge, but I know that I've missed messages when I've had a thread that I created merged, and I've had multiple students complain about it. So I guess an interface-based solution could be that Piazza automatically posts something to the old thread prior to closing it so that students got a notification off of that. But because that's essentially what I do as a workaround, is that I post something in the old thread and say, hey, I'm combining this with this thread. But that's really more of a bug in how Piazza works that I'm trying to correct for, that it seems like it should be an invisible interface there, that I shouldn't have to tell the duplicate thread, hey, you're a duplicate. I should just be able to merge it, and they should get a notification that, and it may be that they get a notification, but it's just not clear what happens. I want to say that I've gotten a notification before, but it was, it's completely unhelpful that it said something like, this thread has been updated, but the contents, if you're used to looking at an email notification, it usually shows you what was added and the contents were blank or something like that. But it was either no notification or a notification where it was not at all clear that what had happened was the thread was merged. So the net effect was that people thought that their questions were unanswered when their questions were answered, and people never saw their responses to them. So I'm not sure that the best answer there is interface change so much as beat up on Piazza and make them fix their bug.
Okay.
But I guess you could argue that the alerts are part of the interface too. So in that case, I'd say we just need an alert that makes it clear what happened. That the current alert is missing or ambiguous, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the same thing.
Okay. Well, Chris, I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you very much. You've been super helpful, and these are all great ideas. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.